She said, "You'll regret losing me one day. Just wait and see." I didn't argue and let her leave. Months later, she was the one posting sad quotes online while I was living the life she walked away from. "You'll regret losing me one day." She said it slowly, like she was reading it off a script she'd been rehearsing for weeks. "Just wait and see." I looked at her, standing in my living room, bags already packed, and I felt something I didn't expect to feel in that moment. Nothing. Not anger. Not desperation. Not the urge to chase or beg or say something clever to make her stay. Just silence. And she hated that more than anything I could have said. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't ask her to reconsider. I just stepped aside, held the door open, and watched her walk out of it. What I didn't know then, what I couldn't have known, was that the woman who just walked out promising I'd regret it would be the same woman, months later, posting heartbreak quotes on her story at 2 in the morning. While I was living the exact life she said I was never capable of building. I need you to understand something first. Before I tell you what happened after she left, before I tell you how everything changed, you need to understand what I thought I was losing that night. Because I genuinely believed, in that moment, that she was the best thing in my life. If you enjoy real stories like this, subscribe, because what happened next changed everything for me. I was 26. She was 25. We had been together for almost 3 years. 3 years of Saturday mornings together. 3 years of inside jokes that only made sense to us. 3 years of her laugh. That specific laugh she had when something caught her completely off guard. I loved that laugh. I loved her. Or at least I loved the version of her I thought I knew. The version that existed before things started to quietly unravel. And the unraveling, that's what I didn't see coming. Not because I was blind, but because it happened so slowly that by the time I noticed it, we were already somewhere I didn't recognize. I didn't realize it then. But that moment, her standing there with packed bags and rehearsed lines, had been a long time coming. And everything that came after it would change me in ways I never anticipated. We met at a friend's birthday gathering. Casual setting. I was talking to my friend Nathan in the corner, not particularly trying to meet anyone. She walked in wearing a blue jacket, hair pulled back, laughing at something before she even came through the door. That laugh. I introduced myself. She introduced herself, Claire. We talked for 3 hours that night without noticing time passing. It felt easy, natural in the way that things rarely feel natural when you're trying to impress someone. We exchanged numbers, texted for 2 weeks before the first date. And the first date turned into the second, and the second turned into the third, and somewhere around the 6th month, she left a hoodie at my apartment and never asked for it back. That's how it started. Simple. Uncomplicated. Good. For a while, it really was good. She was funny in a way that sneaked up on you. She'd say something completely deadpan, and you'd be halfway through your next sentence before it hit you, and you'd lose it. She was passionate about things that mattered to nobody else. She had an entire organized collection of vintage postcards from different decades and could tell you the postmark story of each one. She cooked terribly, but with complete confidence, and I ate every bad meal like it was the best thing I'd ever had. We traveled when we could. Road trips mostly. Long drives with a playlist she spent more time building than she spent packing. We were good together. For a while. But here's the thing about relationships. The cracks don't show up all at once. They appear at the edges first. Small enough to ignore. Easy enough to explain away. And then one day you look at the whole picture and realize the cracks have been spreading for so long that you can barely see the original structure anymore. I should have seen it sooner. I didn't. It started around year 2. I had been working at the same company for 4 years by then. Decent salary. Stable. But I'd started building something on the side. A small consulting business. Nothing dramatic. Just freelance work at first. A few clients. Nights and weekends. Coffee at midnight and spreadsheets at 6 in the morning. The kind of work that doesn't look like anything from the outside but that you know, in your gut, is going somewhere. Claire didn't see it that way. Not at first. She was patient initially. Understanding, even. "It's fine. I know you're busy." But, "It's fine," started coming out differently after a few months. Shorter. Flatter. With that specific pause before the fine that every man learns to fear. I noticed it. And I noticed something else too. She started going out more. Not wildly. Not suspiciously. Just more than before. Different friends. Different places. New names I didn't recognize and stories she'd tell. Including one name that started coming up with quiet regularity. Brandon. "Brandon thinks we should check out this new rooftop place downtown." That was the first time I heard it. I was working at my desk. Didn't look up. "Who's Brandon?" Just a friend from the gym. Cole introduced us. Fine. I went back to the spreadsheet. 3 weeks later. Brandon got us into this gallery opening. You want to come, or are you working? I could hear the edge in it. Are you working wasn't a real question. It was a verdict. I'm finishing something up, but go ahead. Have fun. She left without saying anything else. Came home at 2 in the morning smelling like a cocktail bar and good perfume. I was still at my desk. She looked at me. I looked at her. Neither of us said anything. And that silence said more than either of us was ready to hear out loud. Something was wrong. I felt it like a dull pressure behind my eyes. But I didn't say anything. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I was being paranoid. I went back to the spreadsheet. That was my mistake. Not the spreadsheet. The telling myself it was nothing. About a month after the gallery night, she sat down across from me at the kitchen table, set her phone face down, which she never did, which immediately told me this was a conversation she'd been preparing for. I feel like I don't matter to you anymore. I put my laptop down. That's not true. It feels true. Claire, I'm building something. You know that. This is temporary. You've been saying that for 8 months. Because it takes time. Other things take time too, she said. Like what? Like us. I looked at her. I'm here, aren't I? Physically, she said. Barely. It was a fair point. I knew it was fair. But something in the way she said it, the tone of it, felt like a test I was already failing. What do you want me to do? I asked. I want you to want to be present. I am present. You're not. We went around like that for another hour. No resolution. No breakthrough. Just two people talking past each other in a language neither of them had fully learned yet. She went to bed. I sat at the table for a long time. And here's what I should have done that night. I should have followed her. I should have sat down on the edge of the bed and said, really said, that I heard her, that she mattered, that I wasn't going to let the thing I was building cost me the person I was building it for. I didn't. I went back to the laptop. I told myself we'd work it out. I told myself we had time. What I didn't know was that she had already started looking for something else. The name kept appearing. Brandon's friend is a photographer. We did a shoot downtown. It was fun. Brandon recommended this podcast. I think you'd actually like it. Brandon says that restaurant is overrated. I noticed. I didn't say anything. Because every time I thought about bringing it up, I heard how it would sound. Jealous. Insecure. Exactly the kind of man I didn't want to be. So I stayed quiet. And my silence, which I thought was maturity, read to her as indifference. That's the cruel irony of it. I was trying not to push her away by being controlling. And in doing so, I gave her all the space she needed to drift. One evening, I came home earlier than expected. She was on the couch, phone in hand, smiling at the screen. That particular kind of smile. Private. Almost involuntary. The kind you don't know you're making. She looked up, saw me, and the smile disappeared. Not because she was guilty, not necessarily, but because she'd been somewhere else in that moment. And she knew I'd seen it. You're home early, she said. Finished up ahead of schedule. Oh. She turned the phone over. We had dinner. Talked about surface things. Did the dishes together. And when she reached past me to put a glass away, I caught the notification light blinking on her phone on the counter. I didn't look. I'm not sure if I wish I had or not. Over the next 6 weeks, everything became thinner. The conversations got shorter. The distance in bed, not dramatic, just a few more inches, became something I could feel. She stopped wearing the necklace I'd given her for her birthday. Not a statement. Just stopped. We went to dinner for our 3-year anniversary. Nice place. I'd made the reservation a month out. And she sat across from me in that restaurant, and I watched her check her phone 4 times in the first hour. I didn't say anything. I don't know why I didn't say anything. Maybe I was afraid of what saying something would unlock. Maybe I already knew. Maybe I was hoping the version of us that still felt possible was still out there somewhere, if I just held on long enough. After dinner, she said it was lovely. In the voice you use when something was not lovely. The drive home was quiet. Not comfortable quiet. The other kind. The kind that fills up with everything you're not saying until the air in the car gets heavy with the weight of it. When we got home, she said she was tired. I sat on the balcony for a long time. And for the first time, I let myself think the thought I'd been keeping at the very back of my mind. I think we're over. The thought arrived quietly, without drama, and I sat with it. And somewhere in the sitting, I realized something else. Something that surprised me. I wasn't as devastated as I expected to be. 2 weeks later, Tuesday evening, she came home and she had that look. The one that meant a decision had been made somewhere along the way that I hadn't been part of. We need to talk, she said. Not a question. Okay. She sat down. I sat down. She didn't start right away. She was gathering something, assembling words. I waited. I don't think this is working, she said. There it was. What specifically isn't working? I asked. Us. This. You. Me. The way things are. Which is what exactly? She took a breath. You're not present. You don't prioritize me. You're always working. When I try to talk to you, it feels like I'm interrupting you. I feel like I'm living with a roommate who happens to occasionally pay attention to me. Every sentence landed clean and precise. She'd said these words in her head many times before tonight. Have I been absent? I asked. Yes, and I know that. But we've talked about this, and I thought we were working through it. There's nothing to work through anymore. What does that mean? She looked at me. It means I've already made my decision. I looked back at her. Is there someone else? The pause. That pause. It lasted maybe 3 seconds. But I felt every millisecond of it. I'm not doing this with you. That's not an answer. I'm ending this relationship because it stopped working. That's the answer. I sat very still. Brandon, I said. Not a question. She didn't deny it. She also didn't confirm it. She just looked at the floor. And that was confirmation enough. So that's what this is. Don't what? Notice. Don't make me the villain. I'm not making you anything. I'm just finally understanding what's been happening. She stood up. And that's when she said it. Those words. You'll regret losing me one day. She picked up the bag that had been sitting by the bedroom door. I hadn't even noticed it there before that moment. Which means she'd packed it before this conversation. Which means this conversation was never a discussion. It was a notification. Just wait and see, she said. And she walked to the door. And I did something that surprised even me. I walked ahead of her. And I opened it. Not angrily. Not dramatically. I just held it open. She stopped. Looked at me. Maybe she expected me to crumble. Maybe she expected the begging to start. Maybe she needed me to prove, one more time, that I would always chase. I didn't. I met her eyes. And I said quietly, I genuinely hope things work out for you. And I meant it. She walked out. I closed the door. And I stood there in the silence of my apartment. For a long time. And then I walked to my desk. And I sat down. And I opened my laptop. And I went back to work. I won't romanticize what happened after she left. It wasn't some triumphant montage. It wasn't immediate clarity and strength. That first night was quiet in the wrong way. I worked until about midnight. Then I sat on the balcony. The hoodie she'd left, the one she never asked back for, was draped over the chair out there. I looked at it for a while. And then I took it inside and put it in a bag and put the bag in the closet. Not angrily. Not as a ritual. I just didn't need to look at it. I made coffee at midnight, even though I knew I wouldn't sleep. I called Nathan. She's gone, I said. Long pause. Come over, he offered. Nah, I'm good. I just needed to say it out loud to somebody. You actually good? Or you I'm fine good? I don't know yet, I said honestly. Okay, call me if it gets loud in your head. I will. I didn't call back. Not because it didn't get loud, but because the loudness was something I needed to sit with. She had said I'd regret it, and I was waiting for that regret to arrive. It didn't. Not that night. Not the night after. Not the week after. What arrived instead was something I hadn't expected. Space. And inside that space, something quiet but persistent. Like a door that had been slightly stuck for months finally swinging all the way open. The first week was disorienting more than painful. Not having to time my work around someone else's schedule. Not feeling the weight of her disappointment every time I opened the laptop after 8 o'clock. Not bracing for the size. Not performing presence I didn't have. I worked more in those first 2 weeks than I had in the previous 2 months combined. Not to escape. Not to numb anything. Because for the first time in a long time, the work felt purely mine again. No guilt attached to it. No apology embedded in it. My business, which had been growing slowly and steadily, got my full attention. I renegotiated 2 client contracts. Landed a 3rd client that tripled my previous monthly revenue in one shot. Hired a part-time contractor to handle the overflow. None of this happened because she left. But the leaving removed a kind of friction that I hadn't fully recognized was there. And things started to move. Here's something I want to say carefully, because it matters. I didn't hate her. I didn't spend those early weeks consumed by anger. What I had was something quieter and more complicated than anger. It was grief. For the good version of us that I now understood was already gone long before that last night. For the 3 years that had real warmth in them. For the woman who could make me laugh on a bad day. For the version of her that had existed before, or maybe always existed alongside. The version that walked out my door. But grief has an end if you don't pick at it. I let it run its course. Didn't dramatize it. Didn't post anything cryptic online. Didn't reach out to mutual friends to get updates on what she was doing. Didn't check her social media. Blocked, not out of bitterness, but out of self-preservation. I knew myself well enough to know that checking would be a version of picking at it. So I didn't. And somewhere around the 5th or 6th week, the grief started to quiet. And what replaced it was something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Pure, uncomplicated motivation. I need to describe what the next 4 months looked like. Not to brag, not to package it as some inspiring narrative, but because the contrast between what she predicted and what actually happened is the actual story. I started waking up at 5:30. Not because some book told me to, because I had things to do and not enough hours in the day, and the morning was mine. I started running again. Something I'd stopped doing somewhere in year 2 of the relationship when my schedule got complicated. 3 miles at first, then 5, then 8. I dropped 12 pounds in 3 months without trying to. The business crossed a revenue milestone I'd set 18 months earlier and never quite reached. I hired 2 more people, moved out of my apartment, which had been mine, but it started feeling like the museum of everything that went wrong, and into a better place. A corner unit on the 7th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the city that made me sit in silence for the first 20 minutes after I moved in. My friend Cole came over the first weekend, looked around. "How long have you been doing this?" he asked. "Doing what?" "Living like this." I laughed. "Figuring it out," I said. He shook his head. Not in a bad way. More like he was recalibrating something. "She really did you a favor," he said quietly. I didn't answer right away, because I'd been thinking about that exact thing. And the complicated truth was, yes, she did. Something else happened in those months. My social life, which had quietly contracted during the relationship, opened back up. Friends I'd seen less and less of started reappearing. Nathan's birthday was in month 3 post-breakup. Small gathering. Rooftop bar. I went. And I realized, standing there with a drink in my hand looking out over the city skyline, that I hadn't felt this uncomplicated in years. Not performing. Not managing. Not calculating the emotional cost of how late I stayed, or who I talked to, or whether I seemed sufficiently present. Just there. Just myself. I met people. Had real conversations. Made plans that I actually kept because I wanted to, not because I was trying to balance a ledger. Someone at that party, friend of Nathan's named Alex, ran a creative agency, and we ended up talking for 2 hours about a potential collaboration. That collaboration became a contract 3 weeks later. More money. More growth. More momentum. And I remember thinking, riding the elevator up to my apartment at midnight after that party, that this was the life I'd been trying to build, while simultaneously trying to convince someone else to believe in it. The cruel irony was that the believing, the trusting the process, had to come from me alone, and it couldn't do that while I was constantly apologizing for it. About 3 months after the breakup, Cole mentioned something, casually, like it wasn't something he'd been debating whether to say. "I ran into her last week," he said. "We were getting coffee." I looked at him, and she seemed off. I don't know. Off how? Just, I don't know. I expected her to seem like things were great, you know? And she didn't. I turned my cup. "What about Brandon?" I asked. Cole looked at me carefully. "I think that ended." I thought about that for a moment. Didn't feel what I expected to feel. Not satisfaction. Not vindication. Not sadness either. Just a neutral acknowledgement. The way you receive information that doesn't particularly change anything for you. "How long after she left me?" I asked. Cole paused. "I think 6 weeks." I nodded. 6 weeks. Which meant, and I'm doing this math carefully, without judgment, that whatever Brandon was, it wasn't what she thought it was going to be either. Or maybe it was exactly what it was. Just not what she'd convinced herself it would become. Either way, her call. Her consequences. I finished my coffee. "You okay?" Cole asked. "Yeah," I said. And for once, it wasn't the "I'm fine" version. It was the real version. I was okay. Actually okay. Month 4. I ran into a mutual friend. Her name was Petra, someone who had been loosely in both of our circles, more Claire's than mine. We bumped into each other at a bookstore. Genuine coincidence. She seemed slightly uncomfortable when she saw me, like she wasn't sure what to do with the awkwardness. I made it easy. "Hey," I said. "How are you?" We talked for a few minutes. Normal. Surface. And then she said it. "I don't know if I should say this, but I think she misses you." I looked at her. Didn't respond immediately. "She posts a lot," Petra said carefully. "Like, a lot. Sad stuff. Missing things. Quotes about regret." I had blocked Claire on everything, so I'd seen nothing. "When did that start?" I asked. "I think around month 2. After Brandon. Things didn't work out there. I heard, I said. She saw something online that I think was about you. Petra said. Something? Someone tagged a photo from that rooftop event last month. You were in the background. She apparently saw it, and she trailed off. And what? She called me. Late. Said something like, he looks like he's doing great, and I don't understand. I was quiet. Something about hearing that didn't feel like victory. It just felt like the end of a sentence. Like the last period of a paragraph that I'd already closed. I'm doing okay, I said. She will be too, eventually. Petra nodded. Looked at me for a moment. You really are, aren't you? She said. Doing okay. Yeah, I said. She thought you'd fall apart. I considered that. I know, I said. I want to slow down here. Because this is where the story usually turns into something ugly. Where the narrator gloats. Where it becomes about revenge or proving someone wrong. That's not what I want to tell you. What she saw, if Petra was accurate, was a version of my life that had become, without my engineering it to prove anything, the life she had always said she wanted access to. She had spent a year and a half telling me that I didn't know how to live, that I was too focused, too boring, that I didn't know how to enjoy anything. That Brandon, or people like Brandon, knew how to actually be present, how to actually experience life. What she didn't calculate was that everything I was building was in service of a life that was eventually going to arrive. Not performing it, not funding it with someone else's approval, actually arriving at it. The travel, the freedom of schedule, the apartment with the view, the friendships that were full and real and not contingent on maintaining peace in a relationship that had stopped working. She had wanted the destination, and she'd left before I got there. And the cruel thing, the thing that I genuinely feel some sadness about, not triumph, is that she was the one who could have been there for it. If she'd stayed, if she believed, if she hadn't taken her bags to the door of my apartment and delivered a line about regret, she could have had all of it. She chose not to. That's not a victory for me. That's just the consequence of a decision she made. There's something I haven't told you yet. Something I found out much later. Something that reframes the whole picture. 6 months after the breakup, I got a message from Cole. He sent me a screenshot. It was a text conversation between him and a mutual friend. One line stood out. She said she never actually wanted to break up. She thought he'd chase her. I read it 3 times. The packed bag. The rehearsed lines. You'll regret losing me. It was a bluff. She had expected the door to close before she reached it. She had expected the panic, the grab, the desperate negotiation, the way it had always worked before, not with me, but in her experience of how these moments usually played out. She had done this calculation based on a version of me that may have existed in year 1, but not in year 3. Not after I'd spent 8 months watching her choose other things while I quietly built mine. And when I opened the door instead of closing the distance. When I said, I hope things work out for you, instead of please don't go. She walked out on a bet that I would fold. And I didn't. And she had to live with that. Not as punishment, just as consequence. Nathan showed me one of them eventually. He debated it. I could tell. He finally held his phone out one evening when we were watching something at his place. I feel like you should see this, he said. Not to be weird about it. Just because. I think you should know. I took the phone. It was her public account. She had switched it from private to public at some point. A quote. Something about pouring your energy into someone who wasn't ready for you. Another one. About how you never really appreciate what you had until it's completely, irreversibly gone. One more. A photo of rain on a window with a caption. Thought I knew what I was walking toward. Didn't know what I was walking away from. I handed Nathan his phone back. Looked at the ceiling. She's okay? I asked. I think she's processing something, he said carefully. Processing is good, I said. You're not even. What? I don't know. I expected you to react more. I thought about it. What would reacting do? I asked. He shrugged. I guess nothing. She's going to be okay, I said. She's smart. She'll figure it out. That's very evolved of you, Nathan said dryly. I laughed. I'm not evolved. I just don't have space for it anymore. And that was the truest thing I'd said about any of it. I didn't have space. Not because I was forcing myself not to care, but because my life, the actual daily texture of it, had filled up with things that were real and growing in mine. There was no room for sitting in it. 7 months after the breakup, a Sunday evening, I was cooking, something I'd been teaching myself, badly, but improving, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. New phone, I figured. I opened the message. It was 3 lines. Hey, I know this is probably unexpected. I've been thinking a lot lately. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how things ended. I read it twice. Set the phone face down. Finished cooking. Ate. Cleaned up. sat on the balcony, looked at the city, picked up the phone again, read it one more time, and then I did something. I typed a response. Just one line. I appreciate that. I hope you're doing well. Take care of yourself. Sent it. Put the phone away and sat back in my chair. The city was doing its evening thing. Lights coming on in windows across the skyline. A distant sound of music from somewhere below. And I felt something that I want to describe accurately because the wrong word would make it something it wasn't. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't closure in the theatrical sense people talk about. It was more like completion. The way a song sounds when the last note rings out and fades. Not dramatically. Just done. Right. I watched the city for another hour. And then I went inside. And I slept better than I had in years. I want to tell you what I actually took from all of this. Not as lessons. Not as wisdom to package and deliver. Just what I know on the other side of it. I know that people who leave while predicting your regret are not thinking about your future. They are thinking about their power. The prediction is a hook, designed to pull you back, to make you afraid of the absence of them. And when you don't bite, when you just quietly step aside and hold the door, it breaks the script in a way they're not prepared for. Because the script only has one ending, and it requires your collapse. When you don't collapse, they have to find out what the other ending looks like. And sometimes the other ending is them posting sad quotes at 2 in the morning. Not because you won, but because they gambled on you needing them more than you needed yourself. And they lost. I know that grief doesn't mean you were wrong to let someone go. I grieved her. Really genuinely grieved the good parts of what we were. But grief and regret are not the same thing. I grieve the loss. I never regretted the door. I know that the life you're building doesn't need an audience. The whole time I was working, I wasn't performing it for her or anyone. I was just building. Quietly. Consistently. And the building continued whether she was there to see it or not. Which is the entire point. The minute you need someone to witness your progress to believe it's real, you've made their presence load-bearing. And load-bearing things are dangerous to remove. So you have to build without making them load-bearing in the first place. I know that saying, I hope you're doing well, and meaning it is not weakness. It's the most powerful thing I said in this entire story. Because it meant I was done. Not angry. Not broken. Not waiting for an apology or a reversal. Just done. And genuinely, without performance, hoping she landed somewhere okay. That's what the other side of it looks like. Not cold. Not bitter. Just free. 8 months after she walked out of my apartment. 8 months after she promised I'd regret it. I'm writing this from the apartment with the view. It's early morning. City's just starting to move. The business is at a place I couldn't have clearly imagined a year ago. I'm in the best physical shape I've been in since my early 20s. I have friendships that are real and present and don't require the maintenance of holding a relationship together through a fault line. I'm traveling in 3 weeks. Not a road trip with a playlist she built. My own itinerary. My own pace. Not compensating for anything or proving anything. Just going somewhere I've wanted to go for a long time. There's no one posting sad quotes about me. Because I didn't post anything. I didn't perform. I didn't broadcast the glow up for an audience. I just lived it. And if she's seen any of it, through mutual friends, through the algorithm, through whatever filtered version of someone else's life manages to find its way to you, then she's seen it the way it actually is. Real. Unbranded. Mine. She said I'd regret losing her. I want to answer that finally. Not with anger. Not with gloating. With honesty. The only thing I regret is that I didn't say, sooner, more clearly, more firmly, what I actually needed. Not for her. For myself. The regret I have is that I stayed quiet when I should have spoken. Not about her. About me. About the fact that I was building something and I needed someone who believed in it. And she didn't. And that's nobody's fault. People want what they want. She wanted a life that felt alive right now. I was playing a longer game. Those aren't always compatible. And pretending they are, for another 6 months, another year, wouldn't have changed the incompatibility. It would have just made the ending worse. So no, I don't regret losing her. I regret that it ended the way it did. I regret the months of unnecessary friction. I regret not saying the harder things sooner. But losing her? Walking to that door and holding it open. Watching her leave without chasing? That moment, which she framed as my future loss. That moment was the beginning of everything that came after. And everything that came after has been mine in a way nothing was before it. There's something I think about sometimes. Late at night, when the city has quieted and the apartment is still, I think about the version of this story where I chased, where I grabbed her arm at the door, where I said, please don't go, where I closed the laptop and promised to be different. And I think about what that version of my life would look like now. We'd be together, probably. Technically. She'd still be drifting. I'd still be working. Still less present than she needed. Still not quite building the thing I needed to build. Both of us quietly resenting the half-life we'd chosen over the full one. That version exists in some parallel universe. I don't want it. And here's the thing she never calculated. Here's what her prediction got fundamentally wrong. She thought my regret would be about her. She thought I'd lie awake, missing her specifically. But regret, real regret, is about yourself. It's about the choices you made. The things you could have said but didn't. The version of yourself you let stay small. I looked at my life, the actual life I was living, and I felt no version of that. So she was right about one thing. There was regret. Just not the kind she was predicting. The regret was hers. Posted in quotes at 2 in the morning. Rain on a window. Things you don't know you're walking away from until they're completely gone. She waited for me to arrive at her version of regret. And all she got was me. Living the life she walked away from. Still building. Still here. Still unbothered. She said I'd regret it. She's still waiting.